Inside a mountain on a Norwegian island, 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, there is a vault holding 1.3 million seed samples from almost every country on Earth. It was built to survive nuclear war. It was built to survive the collapse of governments. It was built to sit, frozen, untouched, for 1,000 years, guarded by nothing but the cold of the Arctic itself. It flooded 8 years after it opened. The organization that built it did not tell the public for 7 months. And today, the vault that was supposed to need no human intervention is kept frozen by diesel generators, artificial ground freezing pipes, and staff who check on it every single day. This is the story of the gap between what humanity built and what humanity needed. The man who dreamed this place into existence is an American agronomist named Fowler. For most of his career, Fowler watched the genetic diversity of the world's food crops disappear. Varieties of rice, wheat, maize, and barley that had fed people for thousands of years were vanishing, replaced by a handful of commercial strains bred for yield. If one of those strains failed, hundreds of millions of people would go hungry. The old varieties were the backup, and the backups were being lost. Fowler's idea was simple: build one place, somewhere so cold, so remote, and so politically stable that seeds from every corner of the Earth could be stored there safely forever. A final copy, an insurance policy for the food supply of the entire human species. He chose Svalbard because of the permafrost. The ground on this Arctic archipelago had been frozen for thousands of years. Drill into the side of a mountain, build a chamber deep inside, and the rock itself would keep the seeds at the temperature they needed. No electricity, no cooling system, no staff. Just the cold, doing what the cold had always done. The vault opened in February 2008. Dignitaries from around the world flew in. Seeds arrived in boxes from Kenya, from North Korea, from the United States, from Syria. Fowler stood at the entrance of a tunnel, carved 100 meters into the side of a frozen mountain, and watched his life's work become real. For 7 years, it worked exactly as designed. In 2015, a research center in Aleppo was overrun. The International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas had been one of the most important seed banks in the Middle East. Its collection held genetic material from crops adapted to some of the harshest growing conditions on Earth, the exact varieties the world would need as deserts expanded and rain failed. The war in Syria made the center impossible to operate. The researchers had to abandon it. But years earlier, they had sent copies of their seeds to Svalbard. In 2015, for the first time in its history, the vault was opened for a withdrawal. Boxes were removed. Seeds were flown to Lebanon and Morocco. They were planted. They grew. The crops came back. This was the moment Svalbard did what it had been built to do. A seed bank lost to war had been restored from a backup inside an Arctic mountain. Fowler's insurance policy had paid out. It is the only time in the vault's history that it has ever been used for its intended purpose. 1 year later, the water came in. October 2016. Temperatures in Svalbard that month were the highest ever recorded for October. The permafrost that encased the vault began to thaw at the surface. Snow that should have stayed frozen turned to meltwater, and the meltwater found the one place it could go: the entrance tunnel. The tunnel sloped downward toward the seed chambers. Water ran in through the doorway, traveled 15 meters into the mountain, and then hit the colder air deeper inside. There, it froze. A glacier of ice formed inside the entrance to the world's most secure seed bank. Electrical equipment in the entryway was damaged. The seeds themselves were not reached. This was luck. It was not design. A man named Arne Kristoffersen, a former coal miner who had spent decades working underground in Svalbard, said what the engineers would not. "For me," he said, "it is obvious to build an entrance tunnel upwards so the water can run out. I am really surprised they made such a stupid construction." The Norwegian government spent roughly 200 million kroner to repair and reinforce the facility. The original vault had cost 45 million. The rebuild was nearly triple the price of the thing itself. Engineers brought in waterproofing technology developed for North Sea oil platforms. They drilled frost tubes into the surrounding soil to freeze the ground artificially. They installed pumps inside the tunnel as a precaution, and they put staff on site checking the vault every day. The facility designed to operate without human intervention for 1,000 years now cannot operate without human intervention for a week. And here is what almost nobody covering this story has said out loud. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault cannot store most of the food the world's poorest people actually eat. It can only hold what are called orthodox seeds, seeds that can survive being dried out and frozen. That rules out bananas. It rules out coconuts, coffee, cocoa, and mangoes. It rules out potatoes, which are stored as tubers, not seeds. Most significantly, it rules out cassava, the starchy root crop that feeds more than 500 million people, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Southeast Asia. The vault that was presented to the world as humanity's complete insurance policy covers perhaps half of humanity's actual food. The people most likely to need a backup when the climate fails are the people whose staple crops the vault was never able to hold. After the flood, the Crop Trust, the international organization that co-manages the vault, quietly removed the flooding incident from the official timeline on its website. The most significant failure in the facility's history was erased from the record kept by the people responsible for it. In 2024, Naomi Oreskes, a historian of science at Harvard, flagged this publicly in Scientific American. An institution tasked with safeguarding the genetic heritage of the human food supply had decided its own worst day was not worth remembering. The person who did acknowledge it was Hege Naja Ashen, the communications director for Statsbygg, the Norwegian state agency that owns the building. She told reporters, in plain language, that the vault was built with the idea that the permafrost should re-establish and take care of the tunnel. It did not. One sentence. That is the entire assumption the facility was built on, and she confirmed out loud that it was wrong. Svalbard is warming at 6 to 7 times the global average. It is one of the fastest heating places on the planet. In February 2025, the average temperature across the archipelago was minus 3.3 degrees Celsius. The historical average for February is minus 15. On 14 of the 28 days that month, the temperature rose above zero. Researchers working on the islands reported finding soils that should have been frozen solid year-round. They could be sampled with a spoon. Until October 2023, the vault was powered by electricity from the world's northernmost coal-fired power station, in Longyearbyen. The coal for that station came from a mine on the same archipelago, and that mine was itself flooded by glacial meltwater. The same meltwater from the same warming that had compromised the vault. The seeds meant to protect humanity from climate change were, for 15 years, protected by a facility that ran on the fuel causing it. The vault was rebuilt. The seeds are safe today. The artificial freezing systems are holding. The permafrost is still thawing. The diesel generators are still running. And the climate projections for Svalbard, under a high emissions scenario, show an additional 10 degrees of warming by the end of this century. The vault was designed for a world that no longer exists, and the world it was designed for keeps getting further away. Kerry Fowler is still alive. He is in his mid-70s now. He has spoken publicly about the flood and about everything that followed. He has said the vault is safe. He has said he has no regrets. Think about what it means that he has to say that out loud. The man who spent his life building humanity's insurance policy against the collapse of its food supply has to stand in front of cameras and reassure the public that his life's work was worth doing. Not because the vault failed, because the world it was built to outlast is failing faster than the vault can keep up with. The seeds inside that mountain are a backup. Nobody has built a backup for the mountain.